running 50-mile ultramarathon. Now that sounds like a crazy goal that can only be achieved by a few people, but you can absolutely do this. This is something that average people can do if they know how to train, if they know how to prepare for it. And this is what this video is about. Today, I'm going to teach you everything you need to know about preparing, training, and succeeding at running a 50-mile ultramarathon, whether you're an experienced runner or a new runner. Hi, Simon here. Welcome to my channel. I'm an ultra runner on my way to racing 100-mile ultramarathon, and I want to share my adventure to inspire you and also teach you what I learned along the way so that you can have your own adventure and get out there. Today, I'm diving deep into my experience to teach you how to run a 50-mile ultramarathon. And 50 mile is the magic number. 50K is absolutely an ultramarathon, but I see there's a huge difference between running a 50K and running a 50 mile. The mindset, the preparation, what you need to do, how you need to approach it becomes very, very different. And whereas you could succeed potentially at the 50K, kind of racing a long marathon, that is absolutely not the case at 50 mile. You absolutely have to change the way you're thinking about it, the way you're training, the way you're preparing for these races so that you can be successful. And what I'm going to cover today is not just how many miles you need to run and the training itself. I'm going to talk about things that are a little bit more general consideration that you need to think about for a 50 mile. Things like how to deal with blister, how to run on trail, how to fuel properly. But I will also go into the specific, how many miles should you be training every week? How should you structure your training plan? I'll provide an example of a training plan. And in the description below, I'll put a link to my Patreon where you can go to download the training plan so that you can adapt it yourself and use it yourself. And let's start with, where do you start from? It's important to evaluate where's your fitness. Have you done a 50K? I generally recommend that before doing a 50 mile, you do a 50K. It's good experience, it's good training, it's not going to slow down your progress, but you don't necessarily have to have done a 50K. And in fact, myself, I have never done a 50K before my first 50 mile. Eventually, I did some 50K, and there's some lesson that you learn at the 50K that could be the wrong lesson. Like, it's a longer marathon. That's really not how you should approach it. And just to really emphasize how much of a gap and how much you need to take it seriously between a 50K and a 50 mile, if you look at the finishing time for a 50K compared to a 50 mile, on average, it's gonna take you almost twice as long. For me, a 50K would be 5-6 hours, depends a little bit on the course. For the 50 mile, it's gonna be 10-12 hours. And a lot of people will see that difference. Between 50K and 50 mile, it's not twice the distance, but you become so tired, you're gonna slow down naturally, or you're gonna have to pace very smartly, meaning that you have to plan for a much longer day out there. And much longer day out there means that you might be running a little bit at night, so we'll talk a little bit about that later. And one of the most important things that you will do to prepare for a 50-mile ultramarathon, you guessed it, is going to be your training. And in your training, of course, there's a lot of running. And I'm going to talk a lot about running. I'm going to give you a nice little training plan. But remember that it's not just about running that is important, and the number of miles is not everything. It's also the pace, it's also the amount of time that you spend on your feet, it's the elevation gain, and it's gonna be other things like train for fueling, making sure that you train to run at night. You need to figure out your gear. You also need to research the race that you're gonna do and learn how to use your watch. And there's so many little things that you need to do that don't wait until the last minute to do them. And obviously on my channel, there's a lot of different videos about all of these topics. I really highly suggest that you have a look, because you don't wanna learn how to deal with blisters on race day. And when it comes to running itself, you need to have a good base. There's really no avoiding that. You need to run a good volume to have a good aerobic base, and that means that you need to reach a certain mileage per week. You could always go race and have not trained as much, but it's increasing the risk of injury on race day. On the other end, if you're training much too hard, you have a very high risk of injuries during training. And we focus a lot on training harder and harder all the time. At the same time, you need to be smart and you need to understand when you're pushing too much. The most common reason for someone to fail a 50-mile ultramarathon is not necessarily that they undertrain and that on race day they're just too tired to accomplish it. The most frequent thing that you hear is that in the training cycle, they were training really hard, they decide to push the mileage, push the pace, skip rest day, not doing strength training, And next thing you know, you sustain an injury and you're not able to train appropriately. If you want to have a good career in running, you have to be smart about resting. You have to be smart about these things and be smart about recovering so that your body can build itself back up and you can become stronger. And now I'm going to teach you how to make your training plan. Of course, I'll have a suggestion that you can use yourself and adapt, but I highly recommend that you create your own plan because you have different numbers of weeks. Maybe you want to push the mileage a little bit more. So me telling you how to create a training plan, I think is more helpful than just giving you the training plan. But of course, I'm going to give you a suggestion of a training plan. And what are the elements that you want in your training plan? Well, the first thing that you need to do is you need to sit down and think, what is the race that I'm going to do and how many times do I have to prepare? And what would be a reasonable amount of time? I think generally speaking, a 6 months period of time is a very comfortable amount of time. If you're already kind of a runner, doesn't mean that you can easily do a 50K, but you can go out and you can do a 5K, a 10K, and it won't destroy you. If you're literally starting from the couch, I would recommend maybe not starting with this training plan necessarily, or giving yourself maybe an extra 6 months that you're able to reach the first week that I'm going to put on that training plan. And now you need to understand, okay, where am I at now? Because the first week that we're going to put needs to be something that is not way over the top for you. It's not something that you're going to get injured at the beginning of your training. So something that is matching your fitness level. And then we're going to break it down all the way to race day. And we're going to create training cycle, training blocks. The way I structure my training plan usually is that I will create different training block or training cycle, which are 3 weeks where I will gradually increase mileage, never more than 10%. That's the rule of thumb, but the more gradual that you go, the less likely you're going to have an injury. And then in between these 3 weeks block, I'm going to put 1 week where I have a reduce mileage, reduce everything. And this is more of a recovery week. This is letting my body kind of catch back up a little bit. And then we're going to start the hard training again the week after that. And the cornerstone of preparing for a 50-mile ultra marathon, that was not necessarily the case for the 50K, but the 50-mile, you have to have back-to-back long run. If you work on Monday through Friday, that's pretty simple. Saturday, Sunday, these are your long run, and we're going to increase that mileage gradually. And instead of thinking about, I need my long run to be 80% of the distance that I'm going to finish, which is something that you hear for marathon training, I don't think it's very productive for you to go out there and do a 40 miles training run. This is too much. Myself, even running 100-mile ultramarathon, 200-mile ultramarathon, I never go for training run of more than 20, 25 miles. Anything above that is a little bit counterproductive. You're more destroying your body than actually training. And it's just not helpful. But the way I think about it is think about your back-to-back long run and add those mileage. And those mileage should be a fairly chunky proportion of your weekly total mileage. And these will be long runs. How to run long is exactly like this. I have a video about that, staying in zone 2, very slow pace. The goal is really to not destroy yourself too much and do that mileage feeling relatively fresh. This is the goal of these long runs. Now that you have your long run, the other days, how we're going to break that up, you want to have 1 or 2 rest day per week. You'll want to have 1 or 2 strength training session. You'll want to have 1 or 2 speed session, which could be interval. They could also be threshold run. They could also be hill repeat or hill training, which I also have a video. So you can just structure it and play a little bit. I'm sure if you were a professional runner, there would be an optimized way to do that. But for me, I just want to do something that I will enjoy. So sometimes I like to have interval. I'll include some interval. Sometimes I like to have a hill repeat. I'll include that. And it doesn't really matter. What matters is that when you look at your weekly mileage, about 80% of that mileage will be slow miles, kind of zone 2 mileage. And a lot of that mileage will come from your back-to-back long run. And the rest of it should be higher intensity. That's where your heart rate will go much higher. That's going to help your VO2 max. That's going to help you build resistance. That's going to help you on these uphill, on these downhill. It's very important. And that's where also you need to fine tune your training a little bit. If your 50 mile is going to be a mountain 50 mile with a lot of ups and downs, maybe you should include some power hiking training. Maybe you should include more vertical gain. And maybe you should really focus more and not just 1 session per week, but at least 2 sessions per week on your strength training. And the last piece, of course, I probably have shown numbers here and there, but I don't really want to talk so much about the specific number because this is really something that you should find out for yourself. But if you're training for a 50-mile ultramarathon, what I would recommend is that your peak training, your last big block that I will put here, that is your full mileage for at least 3 weeks in a row, would be about 50 mile. Of course, you could do it with less, and of course, you could do more and be successful too. And at 50 mile, potentially you will still fail. But for me, I feel that the 50 mile is kind of the sweet spot of you're definitely not under training, and you're not overtraining. If you reach that gradually, your body will adapt. If you go to it too quickly, that's where you're gonna overtrain. That's where you're gonna have injuries, and you need to adjust that to your own body. And the longer you've been training, the more you will know yourself, and the more you will realize that maybe 50 miles is not your number. But I don't know you, and I think 50 mile is a good average, is a good target to be very strong at the 50 mile and have a very high chance of having a good day. But you need to reach that gradually, and that's where you create a gradient, as you can see on the training plan that I'm going to show again, where you gradually increase the mileage to reach that. Now, I talk about regular training, these regular 3 weeks, 1 week block, but before the race, it's good to have taper, and taper can be 1 or 2 weeks. That's plenty of time, and you don't have to stress too much about losing fitness in that amount of time. We don't lose fitness in 1 or 2 weeks. That is not the case. And 1 or 2 weeks before the race is not the time where that workout really helped you get so much stronger. If that's the case, maybe you should have done that before. And if you plan ahead, these 1 or 2 weeks are really just to get your body rested, ready to rock and roll. And there's a lot of things that will happen during that time. It's not just a waste of time. It's not just being lazy, but you're building back your glycogen reserve. You're letting your muscle rest. You're making sure that all of your muscle fiber are fully fixed, fully repaired, and then you'll be ready to go on race day. What I do during taper myself, it's you have to jitter a little bit. You've trained so much for it. I just randomly will go for small jog, maybe 3 miles, maybe 6 miles, at a very low pace, just to say that I'm moving, just to feel that I'm doing something. But the point is not to train. The point is to move, and it's kind of keeping loose a little bit. And yeah, probably it helps a little bit your body to just be loose, but also it's mentally, you're a little bit less stressed because you're moving. And let's talk briefly about something that will most likely, unfortunately, happen to almost everyone at some point, and it's running injury during your training. What should you do when you have an injury in the middle of your training block where obviously you didn't prepare for that? One of the reasons I really recommend to take as long as possible that you have to train, it's because it will give you a little bit of buffer. If you have a setbacks where you cannot train appropriately for 1, 2, 3 weeks, don't sweat it, make sure that you're recovering. And that's really what I would say. If you have an injury, deal with it before it becomes a big deal. Don't ignore it. Your pain is real, injuries are real, and sometimes you need to seek help, whether it's other runner just talking about it, what have they done, maybe it's different strength training session, maybe some stretching, maybe changing your shoes, or maybe you need some physiotherapy, some specific targeted muscle to help, or you just need to let your body heal a little bit. You've been increasing mileage and pace too much. Just reducing it for a little bit will help you recover and get back stronger. If you ignore the pain, if you ignore injuries, you're going to make it worse. And if you make it worse, you could totally derail your training block. But if you just have a setback for a few weeks, just get back to training to where you were and then just rewrite your training plan. Now you're going to accelerate a little bit faster. But if you had given yourself the buffer for that it was not a crazy increase in mileage very quickly, which might have been the reason why you get injured in the first place. If you made it very gradual, now you can just increase the pace a little bit and you'll be fine. And just to say it, the time it's gonna happen, it happens always about 4 weeks before a race. You're almost there, you're almost ready, and then you get that injury and it's like, oh my God, 4 weeks out of a race. And it is very stressful, and we all go through that at some point. I think it's a sign that we're actually training to our full capacity. You were playing with fire a little bit. You were reaching that max mileage that your body at this time can handle. And this is just a signal of, all right, we're gonna step back a little bit. Don't freak out. Most likely what happens is that you recover from that in time for the race. And on race day, you're really worried about that ankle that was painful. And it's something totally different that will fuck you up and that you will have a miserable day. Everything will be painful except that ankle. But if you ignore it and you decide to push through it, potentially you get a real injury and then you're not able to race at all on race day. But at the same time, I'm not saying that anytime you're a little bit sore, anytime you're tired, anytime a little bit sick, anytime you have a little bit of pain, you need to drop your workout. That's really not the case. All right, let's talk about mental toughness and mental preparation. The hard truth is that no matter how much you've trained, you'll never be 100% ready for a 50-mile ultramarathon. No matter how fit you are, you're gonna struggle at some point. It's gonna be painful at some point. And it doesn't mean that you shouldn't train. I think both are true. You absolutely need to prepare your body, but you also need to prepare your mind. Because at some point, your body will start failing, and that's where having a very strong mind, very strong mental toughness will help you see that finish line. There's a lot of different tips. There's a lot of different things that you can practice. I have a video about that. But just a few pointers. One is that you really have to break it down aid station by aid station. Don't think about the full race, but rather what you have to do to reach that aid station. 1 mile at a time, one step at a time. That tree over there, we're going to reach that tree running and celebrating mentally these goals. You did it. You can do that next mile. Yeah, 1 mile, I can do 1 mile. I don't know that I can do 200 mile, but I can do 1 mile right now. And next thing you know, you're going to finish the race. Then it's good to have other things to think about. Either it's focusing on your footing, but it can be listening to music, talking with your pacers. These distractions can be very helpful. Another thing that can be helpful is having a bigger purpose of why you're racing. Why are you pushing your limit? Why did you get into ultra running to begin with? These things can help you see the broader picture that help you push beyond the pain. Mental toughness is all about that. It's not about not feeling pain, and it's not about ignoring problem. Mental toughness is about accepting the fact that you're gonna struggle, and hey, if I have pain associated to blisters, I'm still tough even if I take the time to solve that issue. That's the smart thing to do, but it's still gonna be painful, and I need to be able to push through that, be able to accept that to reach my goal, there will be a lot of discomfort, a lot of pain, but my goal is meaningful enough for me to overcome that. I don't want to be sitting down at home eating chips, watching a movie. I want to be here right now. And yeah, it sucks. It's so painful right now. I just want it to be done, but I actually don't really just want it to be done. I want to finish this thing. And the final tool that I think is very helpful is projecting in the future. Think about yourself tomorrow in 1 week, thinking back about you quitting that race. How are you going to feel about that? And I'm not saying that a DNF is never the right option. DNF are part of ultra running. If you push your limit, sometimes you're pushing too hard and you have to pull the plug. And understanding when to pull the plug to not hurt yourself, to not have injuries, to not have health issue is very important. But sometimes you just gotta push through it. And the way I think about it, I've never DNF'd a 100-mile ultramarathon. I have, I think, 55 out of 55 finished. And one of the reason is, of course, I faced situation. I broke my rib, I broke my toe, I was freezing, I was, hypothermic. But I always ask myself, how will I feel tomorrow or in 1 week about dropping this race? Will I feel like it was the right decision and I had done everything I could? Or will I have some regrets? And I would rather suffer right now during the race rather than afterwards wondering what if I had tried to go to that next aid station? What if I had taken a little bit more time to sleep 30 minutes, see if I feel better, go back again? Again, it's not about pushing to, death before DNF, but really making the distinction between pain and discomfort and actual danger. Blister, chafing, super painful, super painful sometimes. When your balls are burning from chafing, it's not fun. But there's no long-term consequence of that. And if I drop from that, I'm very much going to regret. So projecting ahead of time, thinking about these things, also thinking more positively, also thinking about that finish line, thinking about how it's going to feel when you cross that finish line. For me, I'm thinking about Nora that's going to be there, my wife, hugging her, kissing her, sitting down, falling asleep, just hugging. It's going to feel great. And projecting into something positive can help me escape a little bit the tyranny of the present, the pain of the present, the discomfort of the present to reach that goal. And the longer effort also have important consequence as to how many calories you're burning. And if you've seen my video on how to fuel for ultramarathon, you know that we have a good reserve. We have about 2,000 calories worth. And if you're running something like 20 miles, you might not even need to eat anything during your race. But the longer the race is, the more you will need to fuel per hour to compensate for the deficit that you have. And you cannot rely as much on your glycogen reserve, but rather you need to understand how to fuel properly. And then the twist to that is the longer you're running, and we're going to talk about that much more when I talk about 100K and 100 mile, but that's going to start at 50 mile too. It's quite easy to eat a lot at the beginning of a race. In the first few hours, your stomach is doing well. But when you're 6-10 hours in, it becomes very, very difficult. And the problem here is that it's a vicious cycle. We don't really realize it, but digesting takes a lot of energy. A lot of the blood flow will go to our gut, and you have a lot of energy that it is expended so that you can digest. Now, when you're running, your body is saying like, we're running now. There's the wolf chasing us. Now is not the time. Let's just focus all of our energy on our lungs, on our heart, on our legs, and we'll digest later. When you're starting a race, you're still able to digest a little bit, but the longer you go, the harder and harder it becomes. And then food is sitting in your stomach, food is sitting in your gut, and then that will lead to problem from one direction or the other. It's very, very important to be aware of that, and it's very, very important that you practice it, because the vicious cycle here is that you run longer, you get slower, you're longer on trail, it's harder to digest, you have less energy. You get more tired, you go slower. And if you fall in the pattern of only eating when you want to eat or when you're feeling good, you're going to crash down. So you have to have the habit of regularly eating, and the magic number that we're aiming for is 200 or 300 calories per hour. Go a lot with carbs, but if you're able to eat solid food, that's going to help you not feel too sick. So try different things and use your long run to test that. If you have a very long race like a 50 mile, you might end up having to run at night. And running at night is a little bit scary, I think, or you just need to get used to it. It's not as bad as it sounds, but if you're not used to it, if you don't know what you're doing, yeah, it can be a problem. And I have a video also about how to run at night, but the big thing that you need to consider is that obviously you won't see as well, you'll be pretty tired, so be attentive to your footing. But also it's gonna be cold, also you're gonna be tired, also you're gonna want to sit at aid station. So in your training cycle, even though it's not gonna be written in the training plan necessarily 10 miles at night, it's good to include a few of them. It's good to include some workout that will be in the middle of the night, or at least the beginning of the night, or very early in the morning when it's dark, so that you can use to running in these conditions. And when race day happen, you're ready to go. It won't be a concern, and then you're just gonna focus on executing, because on race day, it's gonna be very difficult. Race day is not the time to try new things. Race day is not a time to be lost, to not understand what's going on. Race day is the celebration of all of the training, yes, but it's also the time where you need to focus and you need to execute. All right, let's talk about race day. Race day is the fun day, right? It is the fun day until it's not. And you can absolutely do some running mistake on race day that can kill your whole training. I'm just gonna give a few tips because I have a longer video about that, but the most important one is start slower than you think. You're gonna be out there a very long time, and look, if you're eager to do a very strong finishing time, you always have time to run faster. Unless you're a professional runner, I have never regret going too slow at the beginning, but I have absolutely regret very often going too fast, thinking I was in better shape, or thinking today was my day and then realizing, nope, 30 miles in, nope, it's not my day actually. And then the last 20 miles is a grind. It's so difficult. You feel miserable, and then everyone is just passing you, feeling clearly much better than you because they took the time to dial it down a little bit. And the balance that I try to reach myself, of course, I will be going faster at the beginning than at the end, but it's that zone 2 that we've been training, right? Like these back-to-back long run, we've built that mileage, we've built that ability to run at a pace that feels like a forever pace. And to always keep in mind, you gotta eat. If you're not eating your 200 to 300 calories per hour, it's a good sign that you should probably be slowing down until you're actually able to digest that amount of food. Otherwise, you're gonna face a wall and you're gonna crash. The other thing that can be pretty important is having a crew, potentially having a pacer, people to help you, to support you, because on race day, you're gonna face the unexpected. You wanna prepare ahead of time as much as you can. Don't try anything new on race day. But running 50 miles the first time you're gonna try, and there's gonna be something that's gonna go wrong. It's almost impossible to avoid that, and it's one of the reasons I love ultra running. There's always something to solve, something to resolve. There's always a feeling of adventure and challenge, no matter what. You cannot come in a race thinking, for sure I got this. Something might go wrong, and you need to be prepared for this randomness that will happen. and not get phased too much by it. If something goes wrong, something is unpredicted, something is really not going the way you would want, address it, solve it. You usually have plenty of time to solve problem and then keep going. Also, use aid stations smartly. Don't linger there, don't lose too much time, but make sure that you grab some liquid, grab some food, maybe eat something. If you need a headlamp, if you need extra layers, get them and then get going. Training and running a 50-mile ultra marathon is a big endeavor, but you can absolutely do it, and you have a lot of information in this video and on my channel to help you and to guide you in this wonderful experience. It's not always going to be easy, but I guarantee you will learn a lot about yourself. You will learn a lot about what you're capable of doing, what you're capable of facing is much more than you originally believe. You're going to reach new limits, and reaching these limits, it's not always comfortable, it's not always pleasant, but it's always rewarding. Trust the process, be patient, go one step at a time, and understand that sometimes there will be setback, sometimes there will be failures, sometimes there will be DNF. What you have to do in those situations is go back to basics. What went wrong? How can we solve that? And how can we come back stronger? As you know, I do these videos for fun on my spare time. I'm not a sponsored athlete or anything like that. If you appreciate my videos in general, I do have a Patreon page. I'd really appreciate any support. It's kind of a way to give a tip. All of my videos, all of my material, I make them available for free because I know not everyone can afford these things. But if you think these videos are well made, if you think these videos have been helpful and you want this video to reach more people, please consider contributing to the Patreon. We really appreciate the support. As I mentioned, I'm gonna put the training plan on the link below somewhere. It's gonna be on the Patreon page. You can access it for free. As always, thanks for watching. If you appreciate this video, please leave a thumbs up, comment below, share with your friends, and see you next time.